There She Goes was a huge hit for the Lars, and it should have launched their career. So why didn't it? See, There She Goes was written by a guy who's been described as a genius, a recluse, and a complete nightmare to work with, all at once. A man so obsessed with the right sound that he practically set fire to his own career chasing it. Lee Mavers. The story actually begins in Liverpool in 1983 with a guy named Mike Badger. He came up with the name The Lars and wanted to start a band. In 1984, along came Lee Mavers. Now, Lee wasn't some career-chasing frontman. Quiet, with an ear for melody, and in love with his dad's Mersey beat records. His goal wasn't fame, it was purity. He wanted to create songs that sounded like his favourite tracks of the 60s. But he was also an absolute perfectionist. From that point on, the sound, the vision, the vibe of the band all became about Mavers' obsession with melody and tone, and what he called that perfect 1965 sound. And he was uncompromising, especially if he felt something or someone wasn't lining up with his vision. Badger was gone by 1986 after a pre-gig fight with Mavers. Mavers said to me, "Your time's nearly up in this band." I was like, "What? It's not your band, mate." I said I'm off, packed my guitar and got on the bus. I was gutted. 2 years' work gone overnight. By 1987, the Lars classic lineup had taken shape. Mavers was fanatical. He didn't just write the songs, he micromanaged every note. If a drum hit didn't feel right, he'd bin the whole take. Producers came and went, recordings got scrapped mid-session, and yet the music, when it worked, sounded effortless. But it wasn't. People who have talked about working with him around this time paint a picture of a genius who couldn't get out of his own way. Give him an acoustic guitar and pound for pound he's better than anyone. He was dynamite, an amazingly creative person. It was like a game of snakes and ladders. At any point in making the album he heard something he didn't like, it was back to square one. So what about the song, There She Goes? The song is painfully simple. It clocks in at less than 3 minutes, and yet it was huge. It's catchy as anything and has this amazing combination of sad lyrics with that jangly upbeat tune. It was always going to be a hit, and it came at just the right time. Well, actually it came out 3 times. 1988, 1989 and 1990, with Mavers never really happy with the production. At the end of the 80s, the musical landscape in the UK was changing. The scene needed songs like There She Goes, and mystic musical geniuses like Mavers. Noel Gallagher himself has called it one of his favourite songs from the 90s, and that Oasis want to finish what the Lars started. The Lars were actually an essential precursor to the Britpop movement. In 1981, Eric Clapton said in an interview that the only thing he really liked at the moment was a guy called Lee Mavers. Years later, the Smiths guitarist Johnny Marr said that he was as good as everyone thinks he is. High praise, and I think it's well deserved. The song really is brilliant. There's nothing out of place, nothing wasted. Which is no surprise, now we know how obsessive Lee Mavers was. But I think more important than that is what it started, the bands it inspired, and the music that they'd make are some of the best to ever come out of the UK. So what is the song actually about? A girl, surely? Well, maybe not. People have speculated for years that it's not about a girl, it's actually about heroin. And you can see why with lines like these. There she blows again, pulsing through my vein, and I just can't contain this feeling that remains. I think what probably fanned those rumours is that Lee Mavers admitted to being addicted to heroin in the 90s. Looking back, it would have been easy to put 2 and 2 together. However, it's well worth noting that the song was written before that, released originally in 1988. As for the band, they've mostly denied the rumours, with John Power saying he didn't know and didn't want to know. Guitarist at the time Paul Hemmings has denied it as well, and probably most importantly, Mavers himself has denied it multiple times. So I'm inclined to believe it's about a girl, although I can't find much on who she might have been, or if she was even a real person. The 1988 version of the song didn't really take off for some reason. It was also reissued in '89 using a different producer, and did chart, but still failed to crack the top 50. And during all this, the La's were supposed to be recording an album. But this process was dragging on because of Mavers' impossible standards. They burnt through producers, studios, and money, and through the patience of their record label. The recording session stretched on over 3 years, and over £1 million. Fed up, the label asked producer Steve Lillywhite to piece together an album with the material they did have, and in 1990 their self-titled debut album was released, to widespread critical acclaim, despite the album being released against Mavers' wishes. He disowned the album completely. I hate it. There is not one good thing I can find to say about it. It's like a snake with a broken back. And it shouldn't be understated how influential and important this album was for the future of British rock music. It's become a total indie classic, and it's on this album the version of There She Goes we're familiar with appears on. And finally, the song blew up. Radio stations loved it, unsurprisingly because it's the perfect radio format. MTV ran with it as well, and it became the go-to soundtrack for emotional romantic moments in films. The La's were poised to ride the wave, but they never did. Now, the La's did briefly tour the album across the UK, Europe and the US, but it all ended when John Power decided to quit. And that was essentially the end of the La's. Mavers didn't technically quit, but he did disappear from the public eye and the music scene for years. Most accounts say he had become disillusioned with the music industry and his own music. No second album, no triumphant comeback. One of the most promising bands of the time simply fizzled out. There was a brief reunion in 2005 where fans finally got to see them perform again, and even got to hear some of those unreleased songs. After a very brief tour, the band fizzled out once again. Mavers did perform in 2011 under the La's name, but with a different lineup. But that never came to anything either. For 30 years, he's been referred to as rock's lost genius, but maybe he just couldn't let himself be one. Unlike Johnny Marr, who managed to change indie rock forever in the space of about 20 minutes when he wrote This Charming Man. I've made a full video on the story behind that song. Click over there to watch it next.